We are rolling sevens this weekend. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cup Date for Saturday, May 3rd, 2025. Vic and Neil with you. One game on Friday, one game Saturday, one game Sunday. This may be a pretty quick show today. Almost that you could start the car and leave the engine running.
That's right. One game. Usually you have to wait to have only one game, but 3 nights in a row, you're going to be able to concentrate.
Little picket fence going, because on Friday, St. Louis Blues forced Game 7 of their series with Winnipeg with a 5-2 victory. Final game will be played Sunday, 7 o'clock on TBS in Winnipeg. Mark Scheifele out, Nikolai Ehlers, somewhat of a surprise, returning to the lineup for the first time since April 12th. And early in the game, I thought Winnipeg actually had the better of the play. Ehlers had a really good chance early on, and he was stopped by Jordan Binnington in close. But then the first shot the Blues take by Philip Broberg eludes Connor Hellebuck, and there was some debate as to whether or not Scott Arniel would challenge the play because Dylan Sandberg had pushed Buchnevich into Hellebuck. Jets used their timeout and then decided not to challenge. And I was thinking at that point, Neil, whether or not Arniel would have been better off challenging this, even if he lost, maybe just not to let that goal stand and have Hellebuck feel that the very first shot that he saw beat him.
Yeah, but I think it was pretty, at least to me, it was pretty clear it was not goaltender interference. And I don't think that Scott Arniel wanted to be Jim Hiller. And I think the whole league and the whole hockey world is talking about Jim Hiller and that one ill-advised challenge that he made that changed everything. So I think, Winnipeg was concerned, and he was asked by Jody Shelley on the bench about that, and he answered that it wasn't clear enough for them to take the chance that they might get penalized.
Hellebuck made a couple of good saves in that first period to keep the score 1-0, stopping Jimmy Snuggerud during a Blues power play late in the first period. But overall, an 8-2 shot edge for St. Louis, and you could see the confidence is just continuing to brim for the Blues in their own building.
And I think the reason that you get so confident is because what are you most worried about with the Winnipeg Jets when you go into a series with them? You're worried mostly about Connor Hellebuck. And, when you see your guy, Binnington, playing out of his mind and you're picking holes in Hellebuck, you're not too worried about Kyle Connor. And when Mark Scheifele's healthy, he wasn't playing last night, but you're not too worried about their other parts of their game because their biggest asset for the Winnipeg Jets is a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner in Connor Hellebuck, and he looks like Swiss cheese.
Nonetheless, going into the second period, Jets came out, and Morgan Barron apparently tied the game at the 29-second mark, but that goal was negated by Mason Appleton being offside. But then Jets kept coming. Binnington had to make a big save on Kyle Connor during a Jets power play in the early part of the second. And then finally, Nathan Walker taking a bad slash. Shorthanded are the Blues, and Cole Perfetti ties the game from in close. And so as we move to the middle part of the period, the Jets almost look comfortable in this game at this point. They're doing a better job keeping the shooting lanes clear for Hellebuck. And you get the sense that if they could maybe get this game late second and into the third, they might have a chance to steal this one.
And when you say steal this one, steal the series, because if they win this game, they've won the series. So that's what they thought at that time, but everything sure did turn.
It did, and not long after Binnington stopped Ehlers on a 2-on-1, the roof caved in for Hellebuck and the Jets, because Walker from Broberg at 11:34, 53 seconds later, Braden Shen gets kind of a soft goal that on a one-on-one took a shot from the right wing circle that got over Hellebuck's left pad and under his glove. Then Cam Fowler, his 10th point of the series and second goal, scores through his screen, 3 goals in 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And then off a defensive zone turnover, Tarapchenko scores 4 goals in 5:23, 8 total shots. And what was promising for maybe half the game from Winnipeg, it all went out the window in a very short period of time.
Well, like you said, the roof fell in on Winnipeg, and really just amazing. I mean, just amazing that if I said to you in this series, a team is going to get 4 goals in 5 minutes and 23 seconds on 8 shots, you'd clearly say, well, that'll be Winnipeg. You'd never say that would be St. Louis on Hellebuck, but that's what it was.
Scott Arniel elects to keep Hellebuck in through the remainder of the period, but start of the third, he's replaced for the 3rd time in this series, all the games in St. Louis. Eric Comrie comes in. For Hellebuck in Winnipeg, a .758 save percentage in the 3 games there. It's almost a house of horrors, and you've seen enough goalies where they're fighting the puck and they're out of position and they're diving, they're going all over the place and they're just scrambling, trying to find their game. But when I'm watching Hellebuck, it's almost as if he's putting himself into a position and just hoping that the puck hits him at this point.
His head must be spinning. It must be spinning. The worst thing that a goalie can do is not be able to shake it off, right? Good goalies can shake it off. If you're an NHL goalie at all, you have learned the skill of shaking off what just went in the net and moving on to the next play. You live in the moment. That's the only way you can be a goaltender, is you got to live in the moment. You can't start playing badly because you just let a goal in. And when that does happen, tons more go in. And I think that's where Hellebuck is at right now.
I think that Hellebuck has had a lot of trouble with the traffic in front, but it's just his compete level is surprisingly low in this series. And everybody says, well, he can get past it and all this other stuff. This looks so mental to me that it's going to really take a big effort for him. I think mentally, this is as big a test as he's ever seen in his career coming up in Game 7.
I totally agree. How could there be a bigger one? And by the way, this is the first time there has been a Game 7 in Winnipeg for these Jets.
And actually the other Jets too. The 2 franchises are not connected, but that is correct.
What about the WHA Jets?
I knew you were going to bring that up. We're talking NHL here, big boy.
Well, that's where the team came from.
Before we wrap this game up, I want to throw something out to you. And I think the answer here is obvious. But if you're Scott Arniel, I don't think you start Eric Comrie in Game 7. Because if that blows up in your face, you're going to have the same scrutiny that Jim Hiller went under for different reasons in LA. But I think this leash on Hellebuck has to be really, really short. That if he gives up a soft goal early or he gets beaten twice on the first 3 shots, I think you got to pull him.
I would agree. You got to do something because it's Game 7 and it's obviously a must win. But you definitely do not start Comrie. You don't take the guy that you've ridden all year and all last year and put him on the bench. You go with him and you show confidence in him.
Correct. And of course, that's projecting from my part. And you got to remember, he is still 3-0 there. And I think that's something that the Jets are going to really have to hang their hat on. The home cookie.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be so important that the Jets score first so that they can keep their confidence up. Yeah. Because if St. Louis scores first in Winnipeg, the air is going to be out of the building. The whiteout is going to look like a blackout, and it's not going to be good. So they got to get that first goal. And I usually don't say stuff like that because I know that the NHL, you can do things. But this series has gotten has taken such a mental toll on both teams. A positive way for the eighth seed Blues, and in a very negative way for the President's Trophy Jets.
Whoever survives this series, and they will play the winner of Colorado and Dallas, is going to come out punished, because this series has been physical, it's been nasty, and one of the best sidebar stories really came to light in Game 6 with the Shen brothers yapping at each other, and I'm sure the parents were thrilled to watch this from the stands. The 7:10 mark of the third period, Braden got an unsportsmanlike penalty for yelling at his brother, and I give credit to TBS last night because they had the pictures ready of the two boys as youngsters, fire trucks, and just, great photos of them. And to some degree, this kind of flipped the territorial edge for the rest of the game. Granted, it's 5-1 at the time, but with Braden taking that penalty, Nino Niederreiter scores on the ensuing power play. And really, for the balance of the game, Blues are on their heels. Jets are winning faceoffs. They won 58% last night. And on a late power play, another one taken by Robert Thomas, which wasn't a great penalty either to take. Binnington had to make a great save on Gabe Vilardi in close. Otherwise, this game could have been a little bit tense towards the end. As it was, it ends up 5-2, 15th consecutive win for the Blues at the Enterprise Center going back to the end of the regular season.
Yeah, just amazing. Just amazing the turnaround the Blues have made this season. There's a lot of people in Boston that are really cheering for Jim Montgomery and his St. Louis Blues. And they're just furious with their hometown team.
Interestingly enough, the last time the Blues played a Game 7 was in winning the Stanley Cup at TD Garden in 2019.
And I wouldn't have put a plug nickel before the game on St. Louis to win Game 7 in Boston.
Yep.
But they did it.
On Saturday, Colorado and Dallas wrap up their series, 8 o'clock on ABC. Miro Heiskanen and Jason Robertson are both out. And I found this to be an interesting development because of what had been reported and the level of practice that Heiskanen was getting. So he will miss this entire series. And I believe that Colorado's not going to be too sad not to see the number one defenseman for the Stars in the lineup.
Oh, that's a great thing for Colorado to hear that, because Colorado's pretty healthy.
They are. And I think the biggest thing here is, what team are we going to see? Are we going to see the Dallas team that dominated in Game 5, or the Colorado team that came out with a furious third period to save their season with 4 goals? And we talked on Friday about not so much the importance of the first goal of the game, although everybody wants to have that, but which team would be more likely to be able to come back should they give up the first goal? And you thought it would be Colorado.
Well, I think they have so much more firepower, particularly with Heiskanen and Robertson out for Dallas. So, yeah, I think if any team can come back in a hurry, it would be those teams. The big thing here is going to be, as it is in the Jets and the Blues series, can Ottinger will his way through to getting Dallas the win? Because there's no doubt that Ottinger gives Dallas the edge in goal. They have better goaltending in Ottinger than down at the other end in Mackenzie Blackwood. So I think that's the one thing that, Dallas has got to have going for them. But if he lets in a couple of bloopers, I think it's Colorado all the way.
Give me one skater from each team that we should be looking for to elevate their club to the second round.
McKinnon, obviously. I mean, that's an easy one to do. And I'm just going to take Jamie Benn, actually, and see that he steps up and shows his teammates how to do it.
I'm going to go Val Nichushkin for the Avs and Wyatt Johnston for the Stars.
I knew you'd go Wyatt Johnston. It's a breakout player of the year.
That's right. He is. Had him regular season, had him in this playoff round. Got to ride the horse there.
You do.
And Peter DeBoer, 8-0 in Game 7s, but I know that you prefer to ignore that because,
Well,
as you say, he's not skating. I don't know what this has to do with it.
what does it have to do with it besides it's a fact? That's a fact, but that doesn't mean anything.
We'll check back in tomorrow and see if it still means nothing.
Well, it's not going to mean anything whether they win or lose. All it's going to be is he's going to be 8-1 or he's going to be 9-0.
All right. And if he's 9-0, you'll be reminded because Colorado is your team from the West.
Yeah, they are. They are. And if he's 9-0, I'll be very surprised. But I was surprised last year when Dallas knocked them out. I didn't think that Dallas would beat them last year, and they did. By
the way, I'll own this also that I did have Colorado going to the final against Toronto. So you and I are in this together. Not that we're rooting, but those were our picks.
That I have, and I certainly don't have Toronto going to the final.
After every team is eliminated, you start to hear about injuries, and 3 of them were reported on Friday. For the Tampa Bay Lightning, their captain, Victor Hedman, turns out was playing with a broken foot in their series loss to Florida. And for Montreal, Sam Montembeault, their goaltender, tore groin muscles in the series loss to Washington, and it turns out that Patrick Laine had a broken finger that he suffered in game number 2. And you've seen these over the course of the years that you have been involved in the game. And some of the things that guys play through and play with are just off the charts. I mean, if you're an accountant or a teacher or any sort of walk of life, who goes to work with that kind of stuff?
Well, maybe with a broken finger, but, torn groin muscles that is really painful. And playing on a broken foot, whether it's a microscopic break, obviously is not going to be a huge break because you just couldn't play on it. But it's a fracture in any case. And to play hockey, a hockey skate on a fractured foot, I mean, you become Bob Bond.
You do. All becomes part of the lore. Speaking of which, it is time for this day in Stanley Cup history.
May 3rd.
And when I was doing the research on this, there wasn't a lot on the platter when I first started out. And then things wind up coming together, gets really exciting, and I'm juiced on this one for something that actually happened 57 years ago, because both the Stars and the Blues are playing 7th games this weekend. And this happens to go back to 1968, the West Division final, when the Minnesota North Stars, from where current Dallas Stars relocated from, played St. Louis, scoreless game in the 3rd period, and Walt McKechnie scored for the North Stars with 3:11 left, put Minnesota ahead, only to be tied by Dickie Moore 31 seconds later. Neil, that Dickie Moore.
Yeah.
From the Canadian dynasties. Second overtime off a feed from Jerry Melnick. Breakaway goal for Ron Schock, 250, second OT, beating Cesar Maniago.
One of the great hockey names ever, Cesar Maniago.
I was sharing this before we started recording today, that on YouTube, there are overtime goal histories of every club, and the video of this is on there. It is shot from a low-level goal line handheld, and the footage is grainy, but the actual play-by-play is there. It was just phenomenal.
Yeah, those are so much fun.
You know who the goalie was at the other end?
Let's see, Glenn Hall.
Well played.
This was the first ever playoffs in the NHL for a team from Minnesota and St. Louis. This was the first year of expansion, 67-68. And of course, we know that in 1968, the Stanley Cup ended up going to the Habs,
who wound up beating the Blues in 4 straight, although all 4 of the games were 1-goal games. And Glenn Hall wound up getting the Conn Smythe Trophy for his efforts in the playoffs that year. Round 2 schedule is starting to come out. It was promoted yesterday that had Winnipeg closed their series, then Carolina and Washington would have opened on Sunday. Instead, they are now opening on Tuesday. And on Monday, the only game on the schedule right now is Florida at Toronto. But it is possible that I think we could see Vegas and Edmonton added to this, but we'll certainly have more tomorrow when we return with Stanley Cup Date.
I will bet you your bottom dollar that Vegas will be playing on Monday.
Yeah, well, you did pretty well with my picks last night of
let's not go
Blues
there.
minus 1.5 and over 5.5. So that's my bottom dollar. NHL Wraparound will return on Monday with a second round preview. So please subscribe, like us on Facebook. Our website is NHLWraparound.com. And we will speak to you again on Stanley Cup Date on Sunday.